Everyone, welcome to our channel Studyology. This is session 5, and in today's session, we'll be learning about animal tissues. So, welcome to the session, everyone. So, what is an animal tissue? Animal tissues are made up of animal cells. So, as you know, if it's an animal tissue, then the cells made up or cells combined together to form that tissue will be animal cells. And these tissues are usually not rigid since cells do not have cell walls. So, as we learned in the session 1 about cells, animal cells do not have cell wall, while plant cells are the only cells that have cell walls because animals have a skeleton to maintain their structure, while plants do not have. Let's move on. So, the first animal tissue we'll be learning about will be the epithelial tissue. So, the epithelial tissues are seen on the outer layer of a body or organ surface. They form the outermost protective layer of most of the animals, and there are four types of epithelial tissues, which are squamous epithelium, cuboidal epithelium, columnar epithelium, stratified squamous epithelium. So, these are the four types of epithelial tissue. But what is an epithelial tissue? What is the function of an epithelial tissue? So, epithelial tissues are tissues that are seen on the outer layer of a body or an organ surface, and it protects the layer of the organ, or it protects the lining of the organ. For example, we have our stomach, and to protect the lining of the stomach, epithelial tissues are there so that there is no breakage or there is no injury to the organ. So there are four types of epithelial tissue we'll be learning today. So let's move on to the first type of epithelial tissue, which is a squamous epithelium. Squamous epithelium forms an extremely thin and flat layer of tissues. They are semi-permeable and thus perfect for gaseous exchange. They are present in the lining of the esophagus and mouth. So squamous epithelium are type of a tissue which are very thin and they lay flat. They are semi permeable. As we learned in session 1, semi permeable means that they allow some substances to go in and out through them. So, because they are semi permeable, they are perfect for gases to exchange, and thus they are present in the lining of the esophagus and the mouth. So, the mouth and the esophagus. Esophagus is where the food goes in through the mouth. Next is the cuboidal epithelium. The cuboidal epithelium, as the name tells you, are cuboidal in shape and they form the lining of salivary glands and kidney tubules. So, these cuboidal epithelium form the lining or they protect the linings of the salivary glands and the kidney tubules or the kidney uh, tubes which through the blood filters. They provide mechanical support. So they provide mechanical support or they resist the organs to get or they prevent the organs from getting any injury. They also form glandular epithelium when they form glands. So we had learned in tissues that once the tissue gets more mature, they form glands. So once the epithelium tissue, this cuboidal epithelium gets matured, they also form glandular epithelium. Next is the columnar epithelium. So here also we can say that the name suggests the tissue is in the shape of a column or it's like it's stacked up, it's straight. These tissues line the organs which help in the absorption and secretion, such as lining of the intestines. So these tissues are present in the intestines or where absorption and secretion happens. They are made up of elongated cells. So they have cells that are stacked each together. As I told you, they stack up each together. When cilia is present on these cells, they form ciliated columnar epithelium, like those present in the respiratory tract. So when cilia is, as I told you in session 1 again, cilia is a type of organ that helps a cell to move. So if cilia is present in the cells that make up this tissue, it is called as ciliated columnar epithelium. And ciliated columnar epithelium is present on the respiratory tract, where it helps to, they move, so they help the food to go down to your stomach. Next is the stratified squamous epithelium. So this kind of tissue is formed when multiple layers of squamous epithelium are arranged in a pattern. Our skin is made up of this kind of tissue. So when the squamous epithelium, as I told you, squamous epithelium, this is the stratified squamous epithelium. And this tissue is formed when the squamous epithelium are arranged in a particular way, and this is mainly present in our skin. So here is the pictures of the squamous epithelium, cuboidal epithelium, columnar epithelium, and you can see one type of tissue here, which is pseudo stratified columnar epithelial tissue. So you can see that they have some kind of, you can see my cursor here. They have some kind of ciliated type of organ up here. So this is the cilia. So these are types of the tissues, of epithelial tissues. Let's move on. Next type of tissue is the muscular tissue. So now we are done with the epithelial tissue and their types. Epithelial tissue and their types are the squamous epithelium. Then next is the stratified squamous epithelial. Then there's cuboidal and there are columnar. Next is the muscular tissue. These tissues make up our muscles, which are responsible for almost all the movements that take place in the body. And there are three types of muscular tissues: striated or skeletal muscles, unstriated or smooth muscles, and cardiac muscles. So, muscular tissue, as it's a very common type of tissue we hear, and these tissues make up our muscle system, or it's responsible for all the movements we make in our body. And there are three types of muscular tissues. Let's move on. First type is the striated or the skeletal muscles. All the voluntary movements in our body is carried out by the striated or skeletal muscles. Now voluntary movements are the movements that happens with our consent, or we have to apply some force for the movement to happen. So all those kind of forces or all those kind of movements are carried out by this tissue. They are called skeletal because these tissues are mostly attached to the bones. So these kind of tissues are mostly attached to the bones of our body. They are long, cylindrical, unbranched with striations and are multinucleated. So these type of tissues are long, they're cylindrical in shape, they're not branched. All the cells are not branched and they have striations. Striations are basically some kind of, they form some kind of wave like design that is called as striations, and they are multinucleated. They have more than one nucleus. Next is the unstriated or smooth muscles. Almost all the involuntary movements in the body are carried out by the smooth or unstriated muscles. So there's a mistake here, it's unstriated. I've written striated here, I'm sorry about that. So all the involuntary movements that are not happening with our force, or like it is not happening in our force, it's with the body's force, or the body decides those movements are carried out by these muscles. So they are long, they are smooth, they're spindle shaped, and they're uninucleated. So these type of muscles are long, they're smooth in texture, they're spindle shaped, or you can say needle shaped, and they are only uninucleated, in the sense they're only having one nucleus, and we can find them in places like the alimentary canal or the blood vessels. Let's move on. Next is the cardiac muscles, and cardiac muscles is very very common. Most of you must have known about cardiac or heard about cardiac muscles, and you may be knowing about cardiac muscles too. So cardiac muscles make up our entire heart. So a heart itself is a cardiac muscle. These muscles are involuntary in nature. They don't mean involuntary, as I told you. They are decided by the body. We cannot apply or we cannot control these movements. And they show rhythmic contractions and relaxations. This means that the you can see the heart pumping. So you can see that, that movement, right? It goes in and then out, in and out. That is what contractions and relaxations mean. Or they can say rhythmic contractions and relaxations mean that they move in a specific time, specific period of time. Structurally, uh, So in structure, they may look like striated muscles, but they are branched, uninucleated, and they have intercalated discs. So they are branched, they look like striated muscles, but then they are not, and they only have one nucleus and they have intercalated discs. So these are the muscle tissues. You can see the skeletal muscle here, then the smooth muscle, and the cardiac muscle. Next is the connective tissue. These tissues help in connecting different parts of the body. Examples are blood, bones, cartilage, tendons, ligaments, areolar tissue, and adipose tissues. So these are tissues that help connecting the bones or different parts of the body. So this is the type of a connective tissue, and we are not going much deep on connective tissues now. Next type of tissue is the nervous tissue. Nervous tissue makes up the entire brain, spinal cord, and nerves of the body. They are responsible for all the sensations, consciousness, memory, and emotion. So these are basically tissues that help giving signals to your body, and it's present entirely on the brain. And one example is neurons. So what are neurons? This is a picture of a neuron. These are the cells that form the entire nervous system. The cell consists of a cell body, axon, and axon terminals. So these neurons are made up of a cell body. They have a cell body. They have a structure called axon and axon terminals. And I'll be taking another class about neurons because it's very, very important, and they have different parts that you have to learn. So these are some cells that form the brain, or you can find them in the brain. So guys, that's it about animal tissues. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so that you don't miss any updates. So have fun. Bye biologists. Hope you had fun.